What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is class number 4. I'm Chris Rimbolt, and this is Future Homeschool. This class was created for homeschoolers from grades 7 to 12, but the information in here is relevant to anybody curious about artificial intelligence. Today, we are going to be learning to use AI for writing, and we'll use it to write a few different kinds of things. One, we'll use it to write Python code. This is one of my favorite applications of writing with ChatGPT and AI, and we're going to use it to make a few things that run inside of Google Colab, which is an environment that we looked at in the last class for running code. It's free, it's easy to use, and we can actually specify that we want Colab to be the environment that our Python runs in when we are using ChatGPT to write code. All right, another thing we'll be using it for is using it to write stories for us. So we can have it create stories that we actually will use to make a book, or we can use it to write stories for us to experience. And I'll show you both of those things. And finally, we'll use it to write educational material. This is for when we want to learn something or when we want to create educational material to share, we can actually use ChatGPT to do that. So let's dive in. Let's start with writing some Python code. So I'm going to use GPT 3.5 for this, and I'm going to tell it, please write let's make a Fahrenheit to Celsius calculator in Python that will run in Google Colab. And we're just going to run this and see what it gives us. So GPT is pretty good at writing code. GPT-4 is better than 3.5 for this, but what we're going to do is just copy this code, and we're going to go over to colab.google.com, colab.research.google.com, and we're just going to click this button here that says New Notebook. And all this does is open up a blank page here. So I'm going to rename this GPT_Python. And when you name things when you're writing code, you don't want any spaces in there. You don't want like a space in there, so not GPT space Python, we would want underscore. So always keep your file names free of any spaces when you're working in code. Just makes things easier. If you don't know why now, you'll learn later as you get more into code. So we're going to paste in the code that GPT gave us. We're going to click Run. Sometimes it won't run right on the first try, but a simpler program like this is usually fine. So we're going to enter the temperature in Fahrenheit. It is about, it's about 70 degrees in my downstairs right now. So let's see what that would be in Celsius. So that's 21.11 degrees Celsius. And this looks like the right formula for converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. I've done this quite a bit just because, again, I'm a weather nerd, and a lot of times the weather data that I get is going to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit, and sometimes I have to convert back and forth. So this looks familiar, but just to be safe, we're going to Google this and say, what is 70 degrees Fahrenheit in Celsius? So yeah, 21.111. The reason I did this is because I want to encourage you to have the practice of checking your answers that artificial intelligence gives you, because sometimes it will give you erroneous information. It's not super likely in this scenario here that it would do that, but just have a habit of not 100% trusting what GPT gives you, because we have this weakness as literate humans, where if we read something, we will believe it. just because it's written out and then we read it, we will then be much more likely to believe it. So just know that the way GPT works is it writes stuff out and then you read it and you're fairly likely to believe it. And most of the time it'll be correct, especially if it's GPT-4. But just know to not 100% trust it. Have that in the back of your mind. Always be thinking, might this be wrong? So we're going to do something a little bit more advanced with GPT. And what we're going to do is let's make a Python game that will run in Colab. And I know some things that'll work. I know of some ideas, but I'm going to actually ask it, what are some fun and fairly simple games we could make? So using GPT as a brainstorming partner is actually very useful. We'll look at that later on in the like the intro to entrepreneurship class, where we will learn how to use ChatGPT to help us with creative ideas, help us with brainstorming, help us come up with interesting things. So this is what we're doing for our game here, and we don't necessarily need it to keep writing. Okay, good. It stopped at 6 examples. Sometimes it just keeps going. Cool. Let's do rock, paper, scissors. Let's look at that one. So I'm going to say, let's build number 3. Let's see how it goes. So it's writing the code for us. Good, it imported random. This means that it's able to do things that are not super predictable. Random, you'll see that a lot. You'll see that a lot when you're writing code, if there's a need for the output to not be deterministic. All right, let's copy this and see how it runs. And all we have to do is come back into our GPT Python page here. And if we want to, we can make a new thing, but we'll just use this as our kind of our whiteboard space. So you just hover over the bottom of this here and click plus code, or you can just click plus code up here, and that will create a new box for us. So I'm also going to push plus text just to show you this, and we can move this up above the code box here, and I'm going to type in here GPT 4, and we're going to say rock, paper, scissors game. So you might think, well, why bother naming this? We already know what it is. But the thing is, when you work in a whiteboard like this for a long time, it's easy to lose track of what the code is. So it's important to keep things organized and clean. The more you do that, the better of a coder you will be. I'm going to do F2C calculator for this one. You just hit Shift Enter to close the cell. All right, let's see if this thing works here. And again, you can hit Shift Enter or Shift Return for Mac users like me, or you can click the play button to run the code. So we pasted it in our code, and we're just going to click play. All right, so it's giving us options here. We can quit the game, or we can give it rock, paper, or scissors. And we can't tell by looking at the code which one it's chosen. So we're really playing against the computer here, and we don't really know. So I'm going to choose rock. Computer chose paper. It won. So we're going to choose rock again. And computer chose scissors. So I win. Let's do paper. It's a draw. The computer chose paper. So it went scissors, paper. So it went paper, scissors, paper. So it's not just looping through. That's good. So let's choose rock again. Invalid input. Please enter 1, 2, or 3. So we'll enter 1. Computer chose scissors. All right, so this is kind of fun. And one thing you can do is you can learn how Python works by going in here and editing things, and you'll see how that changes the game and how it's played. This is a nice, simple little piece of code here where you can change the output messages, you can change the way the game physics work, and then we'll click stop to stop the code from running because it just keeps running. But this is a couple of ways to use GPT to write Python code. I really enjoy doing this. I have learned so many things that are possible in Python that I would not have learned if I wasn't using GPT as a coding partner. That's one of the coolest reasons to use it to write code, is it will know things and ways to do things that you probably never would have thought of. So I would encourage you to just experiment with Python within ChatGPT, and then just going over here to this free resource, colab.research.google.com, to run your code. And you can even ask it to make AI things in code and start to build artificial intelligence programs that you will then need to train within Colab. But that's a little bit more advanced. That's for you really ambitious people out there. Also, you can use it to make games that have graphics. People have done that in a few hours or even a couple of days. They've made games within ChatGPT. They tell it what kind of game they want to make, and it tells them what kind of code they will need, and then they walk through the steps and build it. And it can be quite a project, and it can be frustrating at times, but it is possible to do this. It's possible to make a game within like 1 to 3 days using ChatGPT, which that is crazy. Again, as we've talked about before, this used to take like entire teams to be able to do this, and now you have this in your web browser. It's amazing. All right, that was Python for writing code. Now let's go to Python for making stories. And these stories can be just for you, or they can be to share with the world. I'm going to show you a really fun thing that you can do that's having GPT tell you a story, and that is a text-based adventure game. So I'm going to tell it, I would like to play a text-based adventure game. You will be the game. I want the game to be set in the, let's do, what's super nerdy? Star Trek universe. All right, then you just hit enter. Let me know your character's name. I'll be Remy. Oh, it knows that super nerds really care about which version of Star Trek they use, and I'm honestly most familiar with Discovery, so we're going to do that one. Sweet. All right, so we get to choose 3. Oh, these are actually characters from the series. We get to choose 3 people to accompany us on this mission. So let's choose 3 of them. Well, of course, we want Saru. And let's take Stamets as well. He's a favorite. But who else? Who else? Let's do... Let's bring Tilly as well. We'll just bring the first 3 people. This is so fun. Like, what is your favorite fictional universe? You can use GPT to create a story for you using this strategy here. And this is just 3.5. When you use GPT-4, it gets even more complex and realistic. but you can just use the prompt, I would like to play a text-based adventure game. You will be the game. I want the game to be set in the whatever universe you want. And usually, in my experience, when I've done this before, it'll ask you your name first, and then it'll kind of get the game set up. So this is asking us what we want to do on this planet. There's a big panic and buildings are collapsing, and then it gives us 3 different options. I'm starting to wish that I had chosen different crew members here a little bit, but let's use option 1. I think option 2. This would be the best one in this situation. This is actually from the series, the way they incorporate this. So GPT is pretty good at knowing the universe that it's supposed to be in and making a story for you. So it looks like this one, we beat this mission pretty easily. We only took a few turns, but you can ask it to make you more complex missions. But we saved countless lives today. That's the best Star Trek outcome that you can hope for. Next, let's look at using GPT to write stories. So I actually have done this before it was even in ChatGPT. So we're going to go into projects on my website here, and then we'll go to stories told by computers. And these are the 2 books that I have made using GPT. Back before ChatGPT even came out, this was just using GPT-3, and it's called the Playground interface within OpenAI. So we'll go to Playground, and I'll show you what that means. We'll log in. And again, this is a good idea to have on your GPT, because if you have the Pro version, you will need the Google Authenticator. So what this does, again, we'll go back to our stories here in a second, but what this does is it protects your login into GPT by giving you a one-time code. I use the Google Authenticator app because it's free, and even though you can see my code that I'm typing in here, it only is good for like 60 seconds, and then it'll come up with a new code. So I would highly recommend having 2-factor authentication, which is what that's called, when you have a Pro account with OpenAI, and here's why. People can use what's known as your API key. They can use that. It's kind of like having your login to the electric company or something, and then being able to plug into your meter at home and draw electricity from that if they have your API key. And one way to just protect your API key is to put it behind 2-factor authentication. So when it asks you if you want to set that up, definitely would recommend that. But this is a different interface for GPT, and it's not necessarily ChatGPT. You can choose all kinds of different modes for the GPT model. Chat is just one of them. And when you have a login for OpenAI's API, then you can do this. But this is how I built these books first. I used this playground mode here, and again, I wanted to show it to you because it's quite powerful. But let's go back to making a story. This one, my little niece loves ghosts for some reason. She thinks ghosts are really cool, so we're going to click on this one, and this is a story written by GPT-3 and illustrated by Dolly. And now I would use GPT-4 and Midjourney, but still same thing, generating images with AI and text with AI. So I had it tell a story, and you can use this too. And your stories might have more text and less images, but this is a basic proof of concept. So we're going to go back into ChatGPT here. We're going to use 3.5, which is even more powerful than the method that I used to make the book for my niece, and I'm going to tell it, I want to tell a story how about, no, I want to create a story with, we're going to actually ask it. This is something that I would recommend doing when you're making your story, especially if you're doing it for the first time. I would recommend asking it, what are a few classic story structures to choose from? So these are things that you'll start to notice once you know about these things. You'll notice these in movies and TV shows and books where it's like the hero's journey or the quest or episodic structure. And this is like if you just jump into the middle of the story. But once you know about these things, you can actually choose the structure for your story. We're going to choose the 3-act structure. Let's use option 2. I want to create a story. And this structure here we're about to use, I'm going to show you how to use it in the educational part too, where you can use this to create educational materials. But we're going to use it for the story here, and it'll make sense here in a second. So I want to create a story about, let's do a story about how humanity achieved post-scarcity. So post-scarcity is like nobody has any like lack, or nobody goes hungry or unsheltered or anything like that, and goods and services are inexpensive or free. But in this and I think that's actually possible in the world of AI and robotics, and we'll talk about that later. But let's make a story about how humanity achieves post-scarcity. I want it to be told from a human perspective, from the point of view of a, let's make it you, of a homeschooled high schooler. Please create the outline for this story. So this last sentence, please create the outline, that's pretty important. And I'll show you why. Because GPT is not very good at just making the whole story all at once. It will run out of what's known as tokens. And tokens are the allowed budget of words for it to give you. When GPT is working, if you think back to our LLM lesson, what GPT is doing is it's predicting the word that comes next based on an input. So each word that it uses is a certain amount of tokens from its token budget. So as it's spending its budget, it will forget what came before and then start to make unending nonsense. And if you use ChatGPT enough, you will find the end of the token budget and you will see what I'm talking about. And I would encourage you to go do that, to find the end of the token budget. And you'll just find that GPT doesn't know where things end. And that's one of its biggest weaknesses. It just knows to predict the next word. So when you're creating a story, you need to understand that GPT doesn't know how it ends. But if you ask for a structure, it knows how to fill out a structure very, very well. And so it already used its token prediction algorithm to just make a structure here. And now that you have the structure and you have the story type, you can start to fill it in. Let's do the process of zooming in. And we're not going to zoom in super far. I'll leave that to you. I don't want this lesson to run forever, but we're going to say, please write Act 1 in the style of, I really like the Harry Potter books. Let's do it in the style of Harry Potter. So let's see how closely this matches like J.K. Rowling's vibe here. This is kind of cool. So it's actually kind of putting it into the Harry Potter universe a little bit. So now And I would encourage you to get good at writing yourself. Don't just use GPT to write for you unless it's for your own entertainment. If you're going to make this book, I would recommend using this method and not zooming in any further than this level here. We could then go on to ask it to write chapter 1, and I will just to demonstrate it, but this is a really good outline for a book for you to write yourself. And when you do it yourself, you become much more skilled than you would if you just had GPT do your work for you. And that's what education is about, is gaining skills. So this outline here allows you to have somewhere to start. Pretty cool, right? I mean, if you want to be entertained, zoom in on the whole thing. But please write chapter 1 in detail. So also GPT 3.5, by the way, its token budget, I think it's about half that of GPT-4. So if you get the plus version of ChatGPT and you use GPT-4, the token budget is much longer. So this is chapter 1, and this is the story within chapter 1. And again, this can serve as an outline for you, and you can make this more interesting to read. You can make this just better prose, which prose, P-R-O-S-E, that is non-poetic writing is what that means. So you can make better prose here and write a whole book. But that is using GPT to actually create outlines and styles and stories for you. Finally, let's do educational material. I don't want this class to run too long here, so I'm just going to switch to GPT-4. And by the way, if you go to your user settings, you can turn on the web browsing and plugins, which makes it even more powerful. But we may or may not need that when we're creating educational material. Often it will use Wolfram Alpha, which is an educational platform with lots of like math and data and things in there. It will use it to make its results better. So you can choose, currently, you can choose 3 different plugins to activate. And if you have Wolfram activated, it will make your educational work even better. So for this one, let's say I want to learn a language. GPT is fairly good at that. So what I'm going to say is, what language? Now, I want to visit Iceland. It looks pretty cool. It's beautiful geographically, and the people there are interesting. So let's say I want to learn a little bit of language there before I go. So what language is spoken in Iceland? GPT is kind of slow today. Icelandic. Approximately 96% of the people there speak it. Nice. So I want you to create a course for me to learn some basic conversational and functional Icelandic. Please create the outline. So we're going to use the process of zooming in for this. First, we ask for an outline, right? We get our subject, we ask for an outline, and it will then create our outline. And you notice how it's going to divide the outline into modules and lessons? Cool. We now have what I call coordinates. So if we want to get the Icelandic alphabet and pronunciation, if we want to start with Module 1, Lesson 2, what we would then do is go to please create the full lesson for Module 1, Lesson 2. Boom. This is one of my favorite ways to use GPT. When I was a homeschooled high schooler and even on to college and after college, I would use Wikipedia a lot. because Wikipedia has lots of links inside of the articles, and you can just go down a wormhole and learn all kinds of stuff that you would never have ever even known existed if you start with one thing you're interested in and then click the links through that article and into the next and into the next and into the next. Now I feel that way about ChatGPT, where you can start somewhere and then zoom in on the information and just know what you don't know and use that to explore and learn. So this is pretty cool. It's giving us an objective. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to understand and pronounce this alphabet correctly. And audio files for pronunciation. I think it's hallucinating a little bit here because it can't currently create audio files, but it can give us pronunciation exercises, which is pretty important here. So it gives us the alphabet, 32 letters, and then gives us how each of them are pronounced, and then review and quiz and homework, which is awesome. So this is a fairly difficult lesson to learn here, but I would say that you can use this for pretty much anything: history, geography, physics, math, and now that has the Wolfram plugin, the results are even higher quality. So if I had had this when I was in school, I would have used it every day for all of my subjects and gotten better at these topics than 95% of other students out there, which was always my goal, is to be in the top 5% of whatever I'm doing. That was my goal in school, and it's my goal now in everything else I do, in my learning, in my business, and in making these classes for you. But that is today's lesson, using GPT to write. I would like you, for your homework, to choose one of those three things. I want you to either use GPT to write code and then put that into Colab, or I would like you to use GPT to create a story. And the story, it can be either for your own entertainment or it can be for other people to read. And the option 3 is use GPT to write you some educational stuff. Now, once you've done this, you don't have to give me what you've written, right? You can enjoy that yourself and use that yourself. I just want you to tell me what you made, why you made it, and what you think of the results of it. Like, are the results good and useful, or do the results need improvement? So give me 2 paragraphs, what you did and why, and then what you think of what you did and the results. But that's it. Thank you for coming to class. I'm Chris Rimbolt, and I will see you in Lesson 5.